let's kick it off from the first game of the week, the Rams versus the Bills in LA. Boy, howdy, John had something to say. So, John, why don't you kick us off? You were feeling sentiments that I said are, of course, some people are doing that, but I think it's a little hyperbole. But let me know how you feel.
So, for those of you that may not have been here for episode number 24, Braden had a few comments. One of which, Justin, I'm sure you'll remember, is the Rams are an overrated team with a defense that he doesn't fully believe in. Do you believe? Is that what you?
The
Did I
Bills.
say the Rams?
Yeah, the Bills. Yeah,
The Bills are a team that you feel is quite overrated, and that the Rams with
overrated
Matthew,
and overhyped were the words I use. Yes.
the
Yeah.
Rams with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, Gain Allen Robinson as that X receiver, are the better team. They have the quarterback you have more faith in. They have a top 3 to 5 head coach and a defense with star level talent at every single level. Aaron Donald at D tackle, Bobby Wagner, if you think we'll talk about that in a moment, at linebacker, Jalen Ramsey at corner, and I want to attack the direct concern with this Rams team, which is their offensive line. The Bills had two blitzes. No, was it two blitzes or zero blitzes? They didn't blitz the entire game, and they had 7 sacks, over 10 quarterback hits, and Matthew Stafford did not have his best showing by any stretch of the imagination. Now, keep in mind the Bills lost. They didn't have Trey White come into this game, but they also lost Ed Oliver after playing just 17 snaps to an ankle injury. And in spite of that, Von Miller had himself an absolute day with Jordan Phillips, AJ Epinesa, and that Bills defense, during a 6-round corner playing mostly zone coverage, had themselves a terrific showing in week 1 on the road against the defending champions. And most of all, Brandon, the quarterback that you feel is overhyped, and Josh Allen, put on an absolute show. You're one that feels he can take over the game physically with his size, his rushing ability, and his arm strength. But we saw mentally him making consistently precise, accurate throws, reading the field. He was creating some ridiculous plays out of structure. That one touchdown pass to Stephon Diggs where he underthrew him was an incredibly tough play where he escapes and evades pressure in the pocket and throws the ball 35, 40 yards downfield for a touchdown. And he had some ridiculous runs in that game, one of which were a former Penn State cornerback he just slammed to the ground, another where he plowed through Bobby Wagner for a touchdown. Josh Allen absolutely outplayed Matthew Stafford, and outside of one interception where he was a little bit behind his receiver, he played an almost flawless football game. And I'm going to come back to you, Brandon. Justin, I'm sure you're going to have a lot to say about this as well. This Rams offensive line reminded me like Detroit. It was just Matthew Stafford consistently getting hit. And outside of Cooper Kupp, the Rams had nothing offensively. There was no push in the running game. And Allen Robinson, while he was getting open, Stafford didn't have the time to read the entire field and get him the football. So if this Rams offensive line what makes this team a pretender and one that got exposed in week 1 against a injury-riddled Bills defense.
Are you asking me if they got exposed, or are you saying they got exposed?
I think they got exposed. The offensive line interior-wise is very sketchy, and I want to ask you.
Oh, you're talking just the offensive line, not the team in totality.
Well, we saw in week 1 that offensive line plagued the entire team almost. On the offensive end, at least. We'll talk about the defense.
Yeah, no, listen, I can't sit up here and argue that the Rams showed up or whatever. They were not ready. I believe it was half of their starters didn't play the preseason, so I should have expected a little rust from the start, and it just kind of, you saw it throughout the entire game. Like the O line, there was one play, and this is really where it started, the downhill of the O line just started to get eaten to shreds. It was early in the game. Von Miller tries to get past Noteboom, I believe the left tackle's name is, but Noteboom really holds his own and stops him. But then on the very next play, Von Miller hits him with a complete bull rush, catches him off guard, and gets Matthew Stafford down for his first sack of the day of 2. And from there, it just kind of went downhill for the Rams. I mean, one thing I do have to say is Cooper Kupp is still unguardable, and he's for me still the best receiver in football. I mean, him and Matthew Stafford just have a link that is up there with the best of them. Allen Robinson was an absolute no-show. They should put out what's that thing called? APB. or MIA. This guy is like put him on the milk cartons in the stores. Where was he? He had 2 targets the entire game, and 1 target was on the final play of the game. I the defense, Jalen Ramsey got exposed. I mean, I've had question marks about him. What?
The way they're utilizing him in zone coverage exposed the Rams defense, not Jalen Ramsey. He's a press man-to-man corner. That's where he's best. And because of the personnel around him, they have to go zone.
Let's not make excuses for the biggest big mouth at DB. He got exposed that day.
But look at that secondary. He's the one that's holding it all together in the back.
Okay.
end.
Well, then he's not doing a great job because the Bills throwing at Jalen Ramsey, 7 targets, 6 catches, 124 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, and a 158.3 passer rating. They absolutely torched him.
You and I could both agree, though, Josh Allen was making a lot of throws where he was not only leading his receiver, but throwing him open. And some of those throws, I don't know if any quarterback outside of Rodgers could make.
John, time
the
out.
precision.
There was the one throw that's coming right to my mind where I believe it was a hitch route or a curl route or something. It was Stephon Diggs on Jalen Ramsey, and Diggs just completely broke him. That's one-on-one man coverage. You're right there. Like, and you got worked on that play. And listen, yeah, he might have thought he had help on that deep touchdown pass, is what you're referring to. But again, you still it's on you there. I mean, you got to have a high IQ, right? I mean, you see Stephon Diggs, he's going. I don't know, man. Listen, I've had my question marks about Jalen Ramsey. I understand the zone defense that you're talking about, John, and how it can expose them and stuff like that. It's just, listen, man, you didn't have these excuses last year, and I've always looked at Jalen Ramsey and I've just said, like, I don't know. Is it the way football is played nowadays that harbors the defensive players, and that's why he's not as good as he should be? Because he's looked at as the best cornerback in football. Now, when Gilmore was on top and won Defensive Player of the Year, he was the best cornerback in football to me. For me, Jalen, it's just I've got question marks about him. I've had question marks about him, and he needs to step up his performance, because if you're going to talk all that talk, you got to back it up, and he hasn't.
He has. Outside of the Super Bowl where he got, I think it was an offensive pass interference in that big-time Jamar Chase play, where he gave that big-time touchdown.
Tampa Bay, Mike Evans, one-on-one, deep down the field. Mike Evans not a burner.
Exactly. That's the point. It's Tom Brady to Mike Evans. Mike Evans is 6'5" and unguardable upstairs. You have Tom Brady locating balls to him. He doesn't need a burning. That's not what his game is.
Are we going to put Mike Evans on the same field as like a Randy Moss or Terrell Owens and stuff? Because Revis was doing that, and he was the best cornerback. If you're the best cornerback, you got to lock up the best receivers.
I'm not putting Jalen Ramsey on the same field as a Darrell Revis. I'm saying he's a top 5 to top 7 corner. But Revis is the best corner I've seen.
He's an elite corner, and I'll give him that. But I find people, and this happens often, making excuses for him. They always rely on safety help. Oh, the safety's supposed to be there. This is supposed to happen. Well, it didn't. It didn't happen. That's where you're supposed to be pressed up. You're the best corner in the game. You're going against one of the best receivers in the game. We expect you to go man-to-man, toe-to-toe with the guy. Stop blaming the safety. You're supposed to be there, bro. Just take the blame. Just eat it. And you know what? What makes me happy is, oh, man, like people play with an edge. People play cocky, and I'm all for that. But sometimes when they take it over and they just say that they just think they're the best, it drives me nuts. So I'm kind of happy that he ate his words. This is a quote from GQ a couple of years ago about Josh Allen. He says, I think Allen is trash. I don't care what nobody say. He's trash. And it's going to show too. That's a stupid draft pick to me. We played them this year, and I'm excited as hell.
Oof.
Yeah.
That came back.
If I'm not mistaken, he said a lot of things about a lot of play. I think he went at basically every quarterback.
He did.
There, and I'm pretty sure he actually got torched more often than not that season that went up.
And I'll give him his respect, because at the end of the game, I know they asked him about that, and he gave Josh Allen his respect. But you just really ate your words there. And first game of the season in front of millions of fans watching, you got what You wanted, man. Josh Allen showed up, the MVP.
One thing I did want to say, last thing on Jalen Ramsey, is like, if you're the best cornerback, or looked at as the best cornerback in football, right? You've been in the league. What? How long has he been in the league for? What year is he in? Like 8,
Year
7?
6. Giants
Yeah.
in
So he's been in
2016.
the league for a while. He's been in the league for a while, right? You should have a little cachet to say to the defensive coordinator, say, listen, man, what I do best is man-to-man coverage. They've done that for different cornerbacks throughout the league in years previous. I know I've heard that before and seen that before, where one cornerback is going to do his thing, and then you could do whatever you want. This guy, Jalen's like, I got this guy. And we're going to get to the Green Bay game where Jair Alexander said, hey, I want this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying. I would imagine Jalen Ramsey wants Stephon Diggs one-on-one man-to-man coverage. Give him what he wants. He should be the best corner. You're paying him all that money. You traded all those draft picks for him. Those are the moments to shine.
But I feel like that decision is personnel based, and maybe the biggest takeaway, they're talking about this in the broadcast in the game, was Von Miller switching sides. You felt him coming off the edge against Noteboom. In the first quarter especially, the tone was set very early in the first drive, and that changed the entire game for the Rams. Whereas for Los Angeles defensively, they weren't getting that necessary pressure without Von Miller. So I think for Ramsey, when you're not getting that support on the interior for front seven, it's a lot harder to go man-to-man naturally.
And another thing I want to say on the Rams, right? The running game was non-existent. Cam Akers had 3 carries for 0 yards. Henderson was 13 for 47. I mean, they were really predictable for like the first 2 quarters or whatever. It would be their first down play was going to be a run play. Every single time they ran the ball, first down. It reminded me of the Cowboys. Like, you become predictable. You got to change it up or teams are going to catch on to that. Hit a play action or something. I need to see more out of Allen Robinson. I really do. Like, you can't. There was
It's
talk
the offensive line.
Okay, it is the offensive, but John, Cooper Kupp didn't have a problem. 13
Because he's the guy
100.
that shreds zone coverage. It's a completely different thing. That's Stafford's guy. It's his first read every single time. Allen Robinson's on the other side as the X.
That's a little bit more on Sean McVay, where he's got to make Allen Robinson the first read on plays, because you got to feed the one thing I've heard about receivers. You get them the ball early, they start feeling good about themselves. They just need to touch the ball. So get him a couple plays early on. Cooper Kupp's confidence is not going to be knocked if he doesn't get the ball until the second quarter, because you know he's going to be there. Get Allen Robinson involved a little more is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You need him. You need him. If you don't, then...
It is tough, though, because Stafford already has that connection with Cooper Kupp, whereas if Allen, it's his first game playing together, and you want the ball in Kupp's hands. You don't want an A-Rob's. A-Rob's game's not predicated on volume the way it is the Cooper Kupp, where he can take over and shred up a man like I just said. With A-Rob, it's those big plays off of those secondary actions where Stafford's looking there.
All right, how about a red zone target? Or like in the 5-yard line, throw up a goal line fade.
It is tough, though, because the offensive line was really giving them no push in the running game as well. So they were predictable, and you were right. I mean, you almost wouldn't know that Sean McVay was coaching this game, but I think all those issues stem from personnel in the trenches. I think that's what is ultimately going to come down to this year with the Rams. And I've said this to you guys, the Rams are not top 5 I can't speak. The Rams are not a top 5 team in football, and it starts with there in the offensive line. We'll talk about the Buccaneers and all those other teams. They had the tackle depth. The Rams lose Andrew Whitworth, one of the best left tackles in the game, and Austin Corbett, one of the better guards as well. And you're not replacing those guys with high-end draft picks, because in the draft, this team's screwing around and taking Tutu Atwell in the second round. And you look at the receiver depth, I mean, who was the guy starting for them? Bo, the guy in the
that's because
that's the issue with this entire team. Yeah, one of those guys, the receiver goes down, and just in any spot, the entire team's going to crumble.
I get it. I don't know if Justin shares my sentiments with what I'm about to say, but because I haven't heard his thoughts on this, but I know where John's leading. And it's just, I've heard this all week, all Sunday. I saw it on my timeline of not people tweeting at me, but just reactions of week 1. My brother was texting me all day, Thursday and Sunday, and I'm just like, dude, it's week 1. How many more seasons? We got 17 more weeks of this. We saw Green Bay last year get blown the hell out week 1, and Rodgers became the MVP back-to-back. They made it to the playoffs. Like, we've seen one of the perfect examples. Tom Brady and the Patriots get blown out week 1 against Kansas City, the newspaper headlines the next day are, is the dynasty over? And I believe we went to the Super Bowl that year, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. But it's week 1. Enough with the overreactions. The Rams will be fine. They're still going to win the division. They're still going to be a top 3 team in the NFC. They will be fine. Trust me. You're probably going to hear me say this a lot this episode if John keeps acting the way he does. RELAX.
I have to agree with Brandon there because I feel like the first 5 weeks of the NFL season, we're just seeing all the pretenders. They show themselves. They all look good for a little bit. I mean, I could say with complete confidence, I don't know if you guys can agree with me, I haven't learned anything about any of these teams after week 1. There's nothing to know yet. San Francisco found a way to lose. Me and John had them as a top 5 team. We believe they'll turn it around. We still aren't high on the Bears just because they came out with a win. The Patriots lost. Brandon still feels confident about the Patriots, I'm sure. I don't, but we haven't learned a lot from week 1. It's just week 1. This is the biggest toss-up in football. A lot of things are going to twist and turn. Next week, it might be a completely different show. We might see a totally different Jets team, a totally different Giants team, a different Steelers team, a different Bengals. Maybe Joe Burrow doesn't throw 4 picks and he looks like his MVP self, So it is week 1. So I'm not going to sit here and overreact and say the Rams are in a top 5 team. While, yes, they do have some holes on the offensive line, but we knew that going into it. We didn't think they were going to look that bad, but it happens. You're going 15, against a future Hall of Famer, Von Miller, on the other side. You're going to get exposed when you have a young guy at tackle.
Yeah, they got 15 QB hits and 7 sacks on Stafford.
It wasn't just Von Miller. I mean, Jordan Phillips looked like a friggin' all-pro. And here's my thing. Are the Rams getting too much of a benefit of the doubt? Because like you said, Justin, we saw some of these issues coming in. Their offseason was overrated because of the name value of Bobby Wagner brains, but they got worse this offseason. And last year, they had amazing injury luck. Brandon, you will always say I'm not taking injuries to account, but that's always a factor later in the season. So while you can say the Rams are going to figure things out, I don't see how, because where are the X factors that are coming in breakaway outside of Allen Robinson giving them a resurgence? I just don't see on either end of the ball.
John, that's all they need is Allen Robinson to show up. That's it.
Where's the running game?
Who was it? Did they have a run game last year, really? Not really. It was below average.
How about the pass protection? I mean, all of that, man.
Yes, that
it was terrible.
I started the show off with that. I can't make excuses for that. They need to play better, and I think they can. They're going to have 10 days to regroup and refocus and be ready for this upcoming Sunday. And they got the Atlanta Falcons. I think they're in LA. I got them penciled in as a W there. I don't care what Atlanta did with New Orleans this week. Again, it's week 1. Whatever. I expect LA to get a big win there. I just want to say this last thing on not even the Rams-Bills game, but just for everybody to just take this, okay? Chad Ochocinco tweeted, Week 1 is merely the 4th preseason game where the starters finally get a chance to play. As a fan, I wouldn't put too much into the results this week. I retweeted it and just said this. Please take that and it's just week 1. Relax. Okay. Let's get into game 2.
Actually, one more thing before we move forward.
Stafford related? Because Brandon doesn't want to talk about Stafford.
It was Stafford related. So I don't know if you guys saw the Twitter exchange between Richard Sherman and Dan Orlovsky. But they spoke about Matt Stafford. So Dan Orlovsky had tweeted about the interception that Stafford threw targeting Tyler Higbee. And I'll read you the tweet. He said, looks like Stafford is expecting Higbee to see/read. Read it as a squat corner/hard corner and hook it up in the inside. Higbee reads it as a soft corner and runs it out. The guy throws a pick. Sherman's comment back, Stafford being Stafford. I want to hear what Brandon has to say.
100% agree with Dan Orlovsky because I saw the same exact thing. I thought it was a miscommunication between him and Higbee. I mean, Obviously, I mean, if you really think Matthew Stafford is that stupid just to throw the ball to the freaking defender, then you're an idiot. Let's be honest here. He thought Higbee was going to run more of like I don't even know what it was going to be, like a 5-yard out route or something, and he ran like a flat instead, and it's miscommunication. Richard Sherman's, you know what he said about Stafford being Stafford, Sherman gonna Sherman. That's what Sherman does. He's kind of similar to a Jalen Ramsey, but at least he was a really elite player.